Hey, Jenny, how are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm fine. It's freezing in Canberra.
Is it?
Yeah.
So you guys are going fall
Mm,
into winter now, aren't you?
we
The
are.
opposite of
We
where
are.
we are. So
And we
you're
don't even call it fall. We call it autumn.
okay. We call it both. We
Yeah.
nobody can ever decide, is it supper dinner? It's just food time. Whatever. It's all the same. It's good to see you. You're looking well. How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm fine. I think I've been training all my life for just this.
Of you. It's the thing you always wanted, a global pandemic, but really just time to sit on your own and make
Yeah.
your quilts, right?
Yeah.
How are
Yeah.
you
But at the
coping?
same time, well, I'm finding I don't concentrate very well. So I'm doing busy work, which is fun and active and minor. I always think I have two bodies of work. I have the day job, which actually earns some money, which is the teaching and the lecturing and the travel and the pattern sales and stuff like that. And then I have the work I absolutely love, which is art quilts, portraits, work on the Middle East, work on Egypt, work that says something. And what I'm doing is the day job. And I'm absolutely loving what I'm doing, but I feel it's not getting me any forwarder.
It's just filling the time and
Yep,
keeping you busy.
exactly.
That's what
Yes.
so many of us are doing though. We're just, there's too much chaos everywhere else. So even though it's very quiet right now, that's kind of a dichotomy, isn't it? It's
Mm.
quiet out there, but the world, the economy, our heads are just all in chaos. So doing these quiet, mindless, just busy work things is really helpful.
Yeah, that's right. It is. It's fun, and I really enjoy it.
So what is the busy work thing that you're doing right now?
Okay. Right now, I've been plodding through a shimmering triangles, which you can sort of see behind me.
It's one of my favorite
Um,
patterns.
yeah, I sell patterns for that, and it's actually been a fabulous thing to do. It's a PDF download, so people I can't print it and send it. It's 20 pages because it's like a tutorial. And I found a few people get confused by it. And because it is chatty, it's not, cut this, sew this, diagram.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
step-by-step diagram.
so it's step by step. And I started another step by step with lots of tips thrown in on Facebook. So I've got that going on my Shimmering Quilts with Jenny Bowker on Facebook at the moment. And lots of people are joining and commenting and stuff like that. And that's sort of fun because it's keeping me busy. There's questions to answer and PMs coming in and it's always fun to work with cheerful bright colors when you've just crackled in through the frost in the morning.
It is. And I have to tell you, I belong to a quilt bee of women in my neighborhood. And they don't like go and take classes or anything. They just love to sew. And I showed them a picture of your shimmer, and two of them have made at least three quilts now of that pattern, and they love it. They love it. And they
It's
were
fun.
talking about how it's not just here's the one block put together, but it's step by step, choose a solid here and a pattern here, and really walks them
Yep.
through the whole design process.
Yep. It sort of creeps from corner to corner. You choose a fabric to corner on and you make some triangles that use those two. But of course, in the other corner, there's another two fabrics. And in another corner, it's a different combination. So every block, every big square of fabric has four combinations.
Hmm.
And it's truly fun to do, really hilariously fun, actually.
What other pattern are you working on?
I've made up this is a public one. I just threw it out on several groups, a little block called Jenny's Isolation Star, simply because I couldn't find it in four encyclopedias of blocks that I've got. And it uses, for the shimmering triangles, I make 8 half square triangles at a time. it's a really well-known sort of system for triangles,
Right.
and it's fun to do and it's quick. And I was playing with other things you could do with 8 at a time and just one other square. And this one looked as if it had potential because it had lines which looked as if they'd form a square on one side and on the other corner, the beginnings of a star. And it's really a quarter block. It's not a full block in any context, but it meant you could play with color a lot more if you leave it as a quarter. So I started playing with that. I sent the block out into the world and found others were making it. I put it into several quilt groups, watched what they were doing, came up with a border that just eliminates some of it. So the border is only a 4-patch with an alternating plane because I wanted the star to show up better, and made a quilt. And then I quilted it. So that actually is finished. And the quilt is called There's Light at the End of the Tunnel.
Oh, sweet. Nice. And is that how you feel as well? Isolation, then light at the end of the tunnel?
Do you know, I'm not sure how I feel about the isolation. As I said, I'm quite enjoying it. I'm enjoying the fact that I don't have the weight of I must prepare for that trip and I must organise that class, and the musts have sort of disappeared into smoke. And in a way, I'll work better to deadlines, and I know that. And suddenly there's no deadlines. So it's like it's play and not work, and that changes the feel of it. But at the other end of it, I love the travel, and I'm right now feeling very tentative about any sort of travel anywhere overseas. Because right now Australia's pretty good, and a lot of other countries are not.
Right. And I mean, the thing I know you most for is your just extensive travel, especially in Egypt and places like that. How are you in touch with your tent makers?
Yeah, I am. We've been trying to work up some work for them because there's nothing. They're being told to stay at home. These are people who just can't afford medical help, even if they get sick or their families get sick. And to have no work is really quite frightening. Most of them, believe it or not, even on a pittance of an income, are really careful with money, much more careful than I think most people are in the West. If we want something, we'll often buy it. If it's a bit expensive, we will dither and buy it. They tend to save. So some of them have money, as they call it, under the tile, because there's usually a tile in the house that lifts out and they tuck it under there. And some of them are coping, but a lot of them were so skint that there was almost nothing under the tile, and they're struggling. But we're still working up things for them next year in hope that gets going. And if they know something's happening, they've got enormous family networks that they can lean on. And I think they're leaning on that. But honestly, some of them are down to pretty well the very basic bread and tomatoes and yogurt, if they weren't already on that before.
The work that you do with them, I don't even remember what brought it up. My kids were talking about Islamic art. And we were talking about how geometric and beautiful it is. And then I told them all about your project, and they were just, and I guess we should state it because people might not have heard of it. You've been working with a group of, they're the Tentmakers in Cairo. And it's a beautiful, beautiful art form that was dying. And from our perspective over here, it feels like you were one of the people who just lifted it and has kept it going. And now the beautiful tapestries that they make, their hand appliqued pieces, travel around to different quilt exhibits. And I had the pleasure of seeing them live at one exhibit, and I can't for the life of me remember where it was, but they're spectacular and they're beautiful. And sometimes you're able to bring one of the craftsmen with you, and they work live, and to watch them, they just work so fast. Their needles fly.
They do. You know, they work fast because they tell you a slow stitcher has a hungry family. They
Mm.
don't get paid till they finish. So if they start a big piece, it might be 6 weeks before they have any money coming in. And then suddenly they've got a lump. And then they might have another 6 weeks with no money coming in. It's why they're careful with their money, because
Yeah,
they save.
they have
And
to
they're
budget.
such lovely, lovely, kind, gentle men. I just love working with them. And I didn't do anything spectacular. I just happened to be a quilter living in the place who knew about them. And there was this realization that they should be seen by quilters. They were trying to market through furniture outlets and things for cushion covers. And it just wasn't working because people didn't understand it was handwork. They'd order 3,000 pieces for 2 weeks and they couldn't make it. And I realized quilters would realize how good the work was and how clever it was. And that's why we started setting them up in quilt shows. But it's been fun. It's been fun.
Do you miss the travel? How much of your time did you spend traveling before lockdown?
There was 1 year where I was in 22 countries. That's a little bit unusual because it's not just Egypt. I travel all over. I haven't been to Russia. I've always somewhat regretted that I've never got to any of the Russian or the previous USSR countries. But there's pockets all over the world that I've worked in, but partly because travel is very much part of our life. Bob's a diplomat, so I lived long periods in a lot of other countries.
Hmm.
And I just got used to it, and I love it. But as I said, right now, I just keep thinking I'm 72. Am I ready to die? And the answer is a very firm no.
And it's a good time to stay home. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah. What are some of your favorite places that you've traveled to?
Syria probably still is at the top of the list, and that's damaged for a long time at the moment. Really, I guess I like warm, friendly people would be top. Interesting culture, interesting food, an ability to learn and a curiosity about life outside of their own country. All of those things qualify Syria, Egypt, probably Iran. South America, I loved working in Brazil. Not going back there at the moment because they've got a massive problem. Europe is very different. Every country you go to, what I love is that I work mostly with big groups of women. There might be men in the organizing group that I'm writing to, but when I get there, I walk into a classroom full of women, whether it's Japan or whether it's Africa, wherever. And I found that women are engaging, fascinating, interesting, and sometimes especially when they're not in a group that is half men and not in a group that is trying to talk politics. So when they're doing something they love,
Mhm.
it's like traveling side by side in a car on a long car journey. It's as if the walls come down and you talk about everything. So I've always believed the way to know a country is to go into it as a teacher and to work with the women from that country. And often people will say, but didn't you go to such and such an art gallery or didn't you go to this museum? Oh my God, you missed so much. And I think, no, because I know that country in a way that you never will by walking into museums.
That's
I
my
absolutely
favorite.
love it. Yeah.
It's my very, very favorite way to travel as a quilt teacher, because you're with the people and you get to be part of families and you get to see if you do go do tourist stuff, it's with the locals who take you to the places they love, and you see it through the love of their eyes and through a different lens, and you find both how fascinating different cultures are, but at the same time how much we're all the same, how much we are able to connect with each other in spite of food differences and cultural differences, how human beings, and again especially women and women who work and make things, are able to make just really sincere and deep connections.
That's right. Yeah. In a way, the portrait work started as a need to introduce my friends in the Middle East. And it was Egypt, of course, because most of them have been based on Egyptian friends. But I would come back from overseas and someone would say, "Oh, you must be so scared traveling in Egypt. You know, don't isn't it really dangerous? Don't they have lots of terrorists or something?" And I would think about my dear, kind, gentle friends who would give me their last piece of bread if they thought I needed it. You know, they were just a loving people. And I wanted people to be able to look into their faces and look into their eyes and see that they were good, that there was an inherent goodness in the people of the country, regardless of what seemed to be happening at government to government level. And it was why they had to be very realistic portraits. I couldn't put a pile of fabrics on a table and just make things up and, you know, make it cartoonish or sort of, I didn't want it to look trite. I wanted it to look as if there was an intensity in looking into their eyes.
And there definitely is that in your portraiture. There, you get a sense of place, and you really capture the character and the soul of the person that you're depicting. Beautiful, beautiful use of value. Beautiful use of the combination of a portrait, and then some of them are a painted background, some of them are appliqued or pieced scenery. Just I admire your portraiture so much. You've done it, and now that I hear about why you do it that way, that's it. That you're very successful at doing that.
I try to give them a sense of context. In fact, I don't often paint backgrounds. I'll often paint a sky with dyes or something like that, or with a fabric.
I think I'm thinking of the one with the beautiful round door, or the keeper of the mosque, or something. Anyway,
it's not painted, it's applique. Most of them are applique, and it's applique with silver foil, which is really different. And the same with the guy in the desert who's got the amazing rock structures behind him. That's all applique. I try. It's funny, I have sort of private personal rules. I use fusible webbing all the time, but I really don't like seeing stuff glued on and not stitched. Do you know what I mean? I'll always stitch it down. For me, quilting is about the stitch and the sewing and the making with your hands to some extent, even if I use a machine to do all the sewing.
It's that's another thing I love, is that there's room for every kind of quilter and every technique. Whatever vision you have, there's a way you can figure out to put it into cloth.
And one of the things I used to do with people is to get them to write 5 rules that they apply to their quilting, because everyone has their private and personal rules. Those darn rules often give them the most trouble of anything, you know. So, oh no, I have to finish this before I can start anything else. And you think, it's a dog, let it go, you know, it's not working. You know it as well as I do, and you're not enjoying it, so what's the point?
Right. Yeah. Turn around and learn what you needed to learn, and you might have learned that that's not for me, or I can let it go, or that's not a good way for me to do it. Let's turn around and do something else and call it good. It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Oh, Jenny, what are you looking forward to? What's coming up for you? Do you have to create something? You won't be traveling for a little while.
I actually have the drawings done for a bit, and some of the work done for a very big series of portraits, and it's not just portraits, it's portraits in context. There's a place in Cairo called the City of the Dead, and it's actually a cemetery. But all through this cemetery live thousands of people, because the cemetery is a great big open courtyard. It's probably about the size of a suburban block, you know, that you'd put a garden and a house on. And you don't see many tombstones above the ground. What you see is a couple of buildings, a pile of chairs in one of the buildings, a bathroom and a toilet building, and what looks like empty space. But when the body is coming into the cemetery, the caretaker gets a phone call. And the caretaker lives in the courtyard and will put out chairs for the mourners and will open up the grave, which is underground. And one Christmas, Boxing Day, it was the day after Christmas, my daughter was there with her husband and her two daughters, 11 and 13. And I got a phone call from the caretaker of one of the graveyards saying, there's a body coming in, but if you come quickly, I can show you underground. And you always wanted to see. So we raced into the city of the dead and we got there well before the body, and he had it all opened up, and you walk downstairs underground. This is like an ancient Egyptian tomb. The system has not changed. And you walk downstairs and there's a corridor, and all along the sides of the corridor there are rooms. And the rooms have like a plastered in closure, which is circular. So it looks very biblical, very like the idea of a tomb where Jesus was placed. And at the end, they had one gaping open and this piece of rock to the side. And Hamid just disappeared into this black hole, and this hand came out and started beckoning us in. So Bob and I, my daughter and her husband, the two girls, we all climbed in, and I was wondering why Bob was shoving my foot with his foot. And then Hamid clicked on his cigarette lighter, and suddenly we could see. And we were standing between these bodies on the ground, and they were just wrapped. And my 11-year-old granddaughter suddenly said, oh, Granny, my other grandmother never takes us into graves on Boxing Day. This is so cool.
That's not a sentence I can ever imagine happening.
Yeah, but these people have developed things they do in these areas in between burials where they weave silks and spin silks into thicker cords to do applique on clothing. They make glass. They collect all the rubbish glass from the city, remelt it, add some colour, and make beautiful glass vessels. They have all these work going on, and there's an incredible pride in what they do. And really, these are the poorest of the poor. No one chooses to live among the dead unless they want a very quiet neighbour.
Very quiet. That's just so.
So I have a whole body of work drawn up. I've got something like 15 panels drawn up on life living in the city of the dead, and so that's exciting. But I haven't got into it during this period. The drawings look at me every morning, and I feel a bit guilty, and then I pick up something trite and easy and fun.
It will come. It will come.
Yeah, I hope so.
There's light at the end of the tunnel, right?
Yeah.
It will come. And I can't wait to see it when it does. That just is a gripping, fascinating story. Jenny, thank you so much.
I have to find someone who's going to hang 15 pieces of mine in a row because they're going to move sequentially. Yeah.
I'll find
sort
something.
Difficult.
That just sounds amazing. Sounds so cool. Jenny, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to chat with me. Is there anything else that you would like to say to all of our quilters?
Stay safe. Use up your stashes. That's what they're for. If you haven't got a stash, raid your husband's business shirts or something else. He doesn't need them at the moment. There's so many things quilters can do to entertain at home, and we're not just saying safe for us, we say safe for everyone else as well.
Ditto. Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a delight and an absolute pleasure to talk with you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Love you. Love your work.
And it's been really fun. Love what you do too, Lyric. Thanks for putting all this out into the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching. Leave a comment and let's have a conversation. I would also love it if you subscribe to my YouTube channel or check out lyrickinard.com where you can find wonderful art and textile related things. Bye for now.